Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mama 6, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Today, I have Mona Weathers on. She's the host of Homesteading for Beginners, and she is a longtime homesteader and homeschool mom. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you, Kody. I'm glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm excited to have you on today.
Well, thank you. When I was a child, no, I don't know. How far do you want me to go back?
Let's hear a little bit about like your homestead and how you got started.
Okay. Well, we are homesteading currently in North Georgia, but we started out in southern-ish California, in the mountains of California, in a little town called Tehachapi. If anybody is listening and knows that name, they get 5 crowns, 5 stars.
I'm from a town in California that no one's ever heard of called Redwood Valley. So I think there were 1,700 people in it.
Yeah, it's funny. That town actually wasn't super small. It's just not well known, but it's close to Bakersfield, and we were homesteading there for about 15 years. And then we moved to Georgia. So I've always wanted I've always wanted a farm lifestyle. I was the little kid. I will literally go back to the beginning where I was the little girl. Yeah, I was the little girl that dreamed of it. I lived in a city. I grew up in a city. I grew up in different countries. I lived in Germany for a little while, and I was always in a city, and I always dreamed of the country life. I would sit out in the middle of Los Angeles and bird watch. Like I was that girl that did that. Any lizards or anything I found on the ground, I would pick those up. So this lifestyle has always been on my radar and my dreams and my goals. So when I met my husband, he had lived the life I dreamed about. His parents are older, and they were, grew up in the Depression era. They always had a farm. They always had food. They always had something, and they lived on 2.5 acres in a town, and they grew off of those acres as well when he was a child. So he kind of lived the life I wanted. And then when we had children, we decided together that we wanted the same for our kids. So that we moved from a suburban area to like a country area we were on 2.5 acres, and that was our property in California.
Nice. Yeah, we did the same kind of. We had a couple acres in California, and we were like, yeah, we're done. We headed off to Oregon, and then now we're in Idaho. So definitely just knew that this was the life we wanted.
Yeah.
So what drew you? So you said you're in Georgia now. What drew you to Georgia?
We have family here. My sister is here. She raised her kids here, and it was just time to move away, just a job loss and that sort of thing. And it was like, well, we only had, at the time, our youngest was 12, I think, when we moved here. So the other kids were grown and off on their own. So we were like, well, let's just move over this way. And at the time, our son was living in Nashville. He's now living in he's now living in Dallas. So we were trying to move closer to everybody. And the other son was in the Army in Virginia. So we were trying to move close to everybody. Oh, and at the time, also, our oldest daughter was in Wisconsin. So we were literally moving on the other side to be closer to the family. And then they all spread out again.
Yeah, no, it happens.
Yeah.
I know we tried to move closer to family at one point, and it wasn't the right move for us. And so that's how we ended up in Idaho. And now we're not close to anybody at all. Like, we're 27 miles from town.
Oh, wow.
You saw me look. I looked out the window, and I'm like, yeah, our closest neighbor is like a mile away out in the valley.
Oh, wow. I need to have you on my podcast to talk about that and that sort of life, because a lot of people are getting into homesteading doing you're doing and kind of far away, and what the challenges might be and how you fix that and stuff. So
Yes,
that's a good
that would be
topic.
definitely a good topic.
Yeah.
I mean, a hint, it's about community, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, I was looking at some of the stuff that you have going on, and you have this program called, so you have this Homesteading for Beginners workshop, and I was flipping through it and it just looks great. Do you want to tell everyone about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I'm going to go back a little bit because
Mhm.
I've been homesteading for over 20 years, and there was a period of time I've been on social media and stuff since like 2010. My Instagram account is like that old,
Wow.
and
I know my
but
Facebook is, but I boycotted Instagram until about a year ago.
yeah. So in 2010, there were, by the way, there was like hardly any homesteaders, and it was all photographs. There was no video.
Yeah.
But I was sharing at that time, I was sharing my journey, and I had a blog called healthyhomesteading.com, and I was sharing my journey. I was talking about how, I was growing more closer to a healthier lifestyle through the homesteading experience. And I did that for a few years, and then I took a break. And it was from like, I wasn't really doing much. I was like on Facebook only, and I didn't have my Instagram account. I wasn't doing anything on there. And I took a break, and then I came back about 2020, actually. It was when Clubhouse, are you familiar with that platform? Clubhouse.
No.
I talk about it all the time on my mind
I'll have to
because
look into that.
it's not really like a thing as much anymore. There's
Mm.
not, but it was a big part of my transformation to where I am right now, and why I decided to do what I'm doing. But so Clubhouse is an audio only app, and you just go and you have conversations with people, and it was it was almost like a true social app. Everything else I feel like is kind of one to one, but this conversation app, where you can actually have conversations with people, it really brought us together. And it was the community I was looking for because I moved from my really, really great community in California to Georgia. And I was like, I felt all kind of alone. And so when we moved here on this property, it was like 2019. So 2020 was, I wasn't close to anybody really who were homesteading. And so I found this app, and I found this group of people on there that wanted to talk about all the things I wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about, raising chickens, processing chickens, raising
Nice.
dairy goats. It was like, oh my gosh, this is gold. And these people wanted to talk about it, which is, you talk to your friends and your family, and they're like looking at you like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've had the same best friend since I was 2, and there's some things we can talk about for hours, but I start talking about homesteading and she's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not the same. We talk about other things with those friends and family. But so these people wanted to, have these conversations, and I finally was finding community, even though they weren't local, it was online community. But it just felt really good. And a lot of the people that I've been having on my podcast are actually those connections that I made. But what I discovered through all those conversations and people coming in who had not homestead, and everybody was looking at the world like, what do? We need to do something. I realized a lot of people were having trouble getting started, and not just like, I mean, the person that's like dreaming to starting, like that person is the person that I was really trying to help. And then that's so long story, trying to condense it a little bit.
No, we have time.
Yeah. But so that's where the homesteading for beginners stuff came from. That's where all my content, I started talking about, I figured if it was titled Homesteading for Beginners, the people who needed it would know they needed it. So, so I had the podcast, and then I created a checklist, and then I created a workbook, and then I created a workshop. So basically it's that.
I like it.
Yeah. So the checklist is free, and it just helps people get started. And you mentioned earlier, like the key is community. That is actually the first thing on my list. get connected, so I have all these things on my checklist, but and then the workbook is to help you if you're really serious about getting started. It's going to take you a step further. And the workshop is me going through the workbook, parts of the workbook with you. And so that's how that all got started. And that's what I have right now.
Well, I love it because I know when we first started homesteading, and I have to like preface that a little bit. I grew up on a ranch. Like I didn't know any different. But, I majored in agriculture, and when my husband and I met, and my listeners have heard this story before, he got sick and we had to go all natural in hopes to save him. I mean, they basically told him to get his affairs in order.
Wow.
That was 6 years ago. So, and now all his tests are coming back great. So,
That's
we're
amazing.
Yeah. But we had to kind of really change our mindset. And I mean, even at that time, we hunted, we had a garden, we always raised, the kids did 4-H pigs. We buy an extra pig to butcher every year. This was just our routine. But we had to suddenly take that from, this is just kind of how we supplement our food, and this is just how life is, to completely growing everything on our own. And I had to really change my mindset from being an agriculturalist to that homestead, small scale kind of situation. And I was actually talking about it recently at a conference. Some of the stuff that's so basic, like I know I need to worm my cows. I know there's like options for commercial and organic. That's, I can go through all that. But I grew up on a cattle ranch. So we went and bought this 500-gallon or, $500 big thing of wormer and ran 300 cows through the chute and sprayed their backs down. And now I have one dairy cow. What do I do? How do I worm her? Can I worm her and still drink the milk? Like, I mean, I had no concept of how that all worked. And I really had to start from square one, and having something like a checklist for even those that are very comfortable with this lifestyle, something to go through and make sure that you're checking all those boxes and that you're having the right information. I really love that you've put something like this together.
Yeah. It's very basic. And, I wanted it to be that way. So if you look at it and you're like, oh, some of these things might seem obvious, but it's like, well, do it. It might seem obvious, but do it. It's on the checklist. Now you can do it,
I agree. Sometimes those most obvious ones. And, sometimes even having like a really, I don't want to say, like you said, basic, but like ambiguous kind of checklist, it just tells you where you need to go from there, because everyone's homestead is going to be different.
Exactly. And that was the challenge I was facing too. I came into the space, okay, I want to be a coach, basically. I want to be a mentor and a coach and help people with this lifestyle. But homesteading is about so many different things. It's not one. Homesteading is the umbrella or whatever. It's like the thing that holds everything else in there, all the skills that you're learning. So it's like, okay, how am I going to tell everybody this is the way you do this, but I'm trying to help everyone. I could have gone specific and like, okay, I'm a coach for people who have dairy goats or something like that, but I didn't want to do that. So I was like, well, I need to tell people, give them a framework of some sort to say, it doesn't matter what you do inside this thing. It doesn't matter what the skills that you decide to learn. This is the kind of the area that'll help you keep on track and not give up. That's what I was also seeing. I was seeing a lot of people getting overwhelmed and giving up. And I'm like, well, I've been there. I've been there. I mean, you have a dairy animal. Dairy animals are not easy.
No.
They require a lot of work. They require daily, like you can't just go, oh, I'm going to go most animals do require daily care, but dairy animals are different because they need to be milked every day. And it's not like you throw them some food.
Yeah. And also just the relationship you have with them. I mean, I sometimes don't go see my sows for a week at a time. They're getting fed, like my son or my husband are feeding them, but I don't go spend time with my sows all the time. But I went up there the other day and they were also excited to see me because they know that mom brings treats, which is I stop in the chicken coop first and grab them eggs. But the dairy cows, if you're not hands-on with them every day, they hate you.
Yeah.
They're,
Yeah.
because there have been times where even, we just go out of town for the weekend, so we'll leave a calf on and we come back Monday morning and suddenly they no longer know how the stanchion works
Yeah.
and they no longer know you.
Right. Right. And then try to get somebody to cover for you when you go
Mhm.
on vacation. That's a whole nother thing.
Oh
I've
yeah.
never I've never had a dairy cow, but I did um watch, I was a farm sitter, so I would
Mhm.
take care of other people's animals. So I did have to milk a cow before, and I was like, I think I'll keep my goats. They're a little bit
Right.
easier. Um,
That's funny. We
so
found the goats to be such a pain in the booty
really,
and love working with our cows so much that we actually have 3 cows that will be calving. Like we went dry for a season. We just lot going
mhm,
on. But so we'll have 3 calving in the fall and then we're getting one more heifer this month.
mhm.
So we'll have 4.
Yeah. Yeah, I like cows. I mean, my husband would have probably preferred the milk versus the dairy versus
Mhm.
the goat milk, but for me and I was thinking about this because I've heard a lot of people say this about their goats, and I was thinking maybe it has something to do with the bloodlines and the way they're brought up, because I had an actual my dairy goat, um she was a breeder, the dairy
Mhm.
goat breeder. She was she showed dairy goats. So hers were like beautiful udders, just perfect udders and lots of milk and very well tempered. All of her
Oh,
goats
nice.
were great. And they were like dogs to me. They never tried to
Mhm.
like, I mean, when the babies were babies, they were rambunctious and jumping off of
They're
things,
cute.
but we didn't have issues like that all these other people were talking about. And I even had one that was quiet. And her name was Whisper. I named her Whisper because she was quiet, and all of her babies were also quiet. So
Oh,
I was
kind of.
like, maybe it's like the breeding.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some great dairy goats. It was just,
Mhm.
I don't know. It ended up
Yeah.
not being our thing. And I've always loved goats. I worked in the sheep and goat unit in college.
Mm.
And I mean, because meat goats, but it was still, I was working with them on a daily basis and was really
Mhm.
comfortable with them. But as far as the actual milk, my husband spent a lot of time in Iraq
Mm.
and a lot of the food there has goat milk or goat
Mm.
cheese
Yeah.
and it just that's not taken care of as well as it is
Mhm.
here. And he's just like he can't do it like at
Mhm.
all. So then I was milking a lot to either sell or no one in my house was really using it, so it wasn't.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that makes a big difference. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't actually like goat cheese. Or the kind that has, I call it, because we've had, Kody is what we call it, when it has that off
Hmm.
taste. So I would process mine a certain way to where it tasted very, very similar to cow's milk. You just have to
Mm.
make sure it gets chilled really fast,
Hmm.
like put it in the freezer. I'd have two quart, not two, quart jars, so that milk into the quart jars or milk into a pot, bucket or pail, and then I'd put them immediately after straining immediately into the freezer for at least 2 or
Oh
3
wow.
hours, and that
Okay.
makes the milk, something about that quick chill makes the milk
Hmm.
taste more like cow's milk. The
Hmm.
only difference I feel like is it over a couple of, like, it wouldn't last that long, so like a week later then it would start tasting that goaty
Oh,
flavor.
okay.
But
That's
it's not, nothing's
interesting.
wrong with the goaty flavor. It's not like the milk went sour or anything. It's just what goat milk has. The other thing is, this is something I learned from my breeder, was that you feed a goat, if you want goat milk to taste like cow's milk, you feed it like a cow. So we
Ah,
would
that
feed
makes
it high
sense.
quality alfalfa hay.
Hmm.
So that's our goats got like the good stuff.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And those are some really
Mhm.
good tips. And I actually love goat cheese.
Mhm.
I have a couple recipes that my husband actually looks forward to
Mm.
because it doesn't have that goaty flavor that he
Yeah.
doesn't like from being, in the like in Iraq and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of them is I always say it wrong. Is it Chev?
Yeah. I think that's how you say it.
Okay.
I'm,
I get
yeah.
an I get an herbed one of those and I
Hmm.
stuff chicken breasts with that and like minced
Mm.
garlic and then sear it and do like asparagus with it and stuff. And it
Mm.
is my husband actually like gets excited for that one. So
Hmm. Yeah, I never really got it. It's funny because I never really got much into the goat cheese making. I would make maybe it's the one you're talking about. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's the one that you can just basically curd and strain
Just a
and I
soft
would
cheese, yeah.
yeah. And I would make yogurt also. My yogurt was good too. And then I would strain that and that would make like a cream cheese. So those were good ones, but I didn't really get into much other than that.
Yeah, I was just starting to master cow cheese. I mean, I guess.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
when we decided to go dry for a season, and I was like, I have all this like great stuff in my pantry, and I'm so excited to get back at it this winter. But
Hmm.
I did master like a good farmer's cheese, of course, butter, yogurt. My kids never liked the yogurt. I thought it was so much better than anything we bought in the
Mm.
store, but I think it didn't taste exactly like what we got in the store.
Yeah.
Of course, my 3-year-old now, he hasn't had raw milk yogurt in a year and a half. I have a feeling that he would be all over it. So,
Yeah.
like, we can't keep him out of the elderberry syrup right now. So
Oh,
he just kind of, he's got like more of a different taste, you know?
hmm. Yeah, that seems to happen. Just curious, when did you start like this lifestyle with like how old were your kids? Because you have like four, right?
Yeah, we have 6.
Oh, six. Okay.
So when we made that full change was about 6 years ago.
Hmm.
And let's see, the oldest was 14 and the youngest wasn't even born yet.
Okay.
So we had like 14, 8, 1-year-old, you know.
Hmm. That's kind of the way my kids were. My two oldest were 12 and 7.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then the youngest wasn't born yet.
Yeah.
So she was born on the farm. And what I found interesting, and it makes sense, the ones that are born on the farm are like are they're helpful. They do more
Hmm.
work. They learn the things. My daughter was 7 when she started milking goats for me.
Yeah.
And 10, by the time she was 10, she was full on milking 2 or 3 goats for me and with no problem. And yeah.
Yeah. That's, my twins, they're 14
Mhm.
now. When my husband and I met, we're a year's mine and ours.
Okay.
So my twins were 6 and his boys were 8 and 10.
Mhm.
And the twins had always been on a farm. Like I had gone back to college later in my 20s and I already had them. So
Mm.
I was going to a 4-year university with 3-year-old twins. They were working on the school farm with me.
Oh, fun.
So this was always their lifestyle.
Hmm.
And then when I met my husband, who his boys hadn't really had that lifestyle as much, there was definitely more of a transition period there.
Hmm.
But I mean, now they've both completely embraced it. So,
That's good. Yeah, I
but
kind of had more resistance with my teens, so I didn't because when even though my daughter was 12 when we got the property, the only thing we had at that time were horses. So
mhm,
we started our journey with horses because that's always been my passion and
yeah.
having horses. So then we got chickens and then the garden came and then we got the dairy goats. Like it was like that. So
Mhm.
my oldest was more like 16 when we actually like were in the full, like had all the things. And she was about ready to leave for college. But so I didn't really force them because it wasn't like their thing. They were getting,
Mhm.
they had to help me, but they
Mhm.
especially had to help me with the baby because at this time my uh youngest was born. And so I think I might have said the wrong numbers. I was so bad with numbers.
It's
Like as
fine.
far I think maybe my daughter was 10 my oldest was 10. I think I said 12. My oldest was 10 when we got the property because then I was like, she was 12 when we had the baby. So I can't do yeah, anyway. So but anyway, I just didn't force them. They had to help me with the baby, if I
That's
had to go
my
out and do the
daughter and my
chores. Yeah.
youngest are about the same distance apart. She's 14
Hmm.
and he's 3.
Okay.
And I mean, she's little mini mom.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was
Sometimes I
so
almost have to
helpful.
balance it. I'm like, oh, Savannah's got it handled. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, I'm actually mom.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to have some conversations like that too, because the oldest were like, they didn't know what to do sometimes when she wouldn't listen.
Mhm.
And then I would have to say, okay, just have her call me. so I can talk to her, because what you're doing is not working.
Yeah, right now our 3-year-old, he's, for lack of better word, a terrorist. I mean, he is exhausting. I mean, he is a full-time job 24/7 for everybody. Like, we even have to have
Wow.
alarms on our doors and stuff because he'll just leave in the middle of the night.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And he's out there like trying to start the lawnmower, and when the lawnmower won't start, he's popping the hood and trying to, like, I don't even know, do what to it.
He's going to be running the farm before you know it.
Oh, I'm sure of it. But yeah, I let them start helping as soon as they're willing. And I mean, that those younger ones, they want to help. Like, don't miss out on that opportunity.
Well, I'm experiencing that with my grandkids. As my oldest daughter and her family moved in with us a couple months ago. They were in Mexico City, and now they're here, trying to transition to move here. So we thankfully have a basement apartment for them. So so we have 3 grandkids here. The oldest is 6, 4, or he will be 6 in November, but 4, and then 1.5. And so there's a lot going on, but it's so nice to be able to share this lifestyle with them. And this is the oldest that I was talking about that wasn't really super interested in the lifestyle. Now she's really enjoying it with her
Good.
kids. Yeah, it's very nice for me to see this.
I'm kind of excited for those times, you know, like, even though all my kids have been excited about the farm, I'm interested how it's going to be when the grandkids start coming in.
Yeah. Well, and you were saying, so my middle grandchild and my daughter's going to have another baby in July. So we're going to have 4.
Exciting.
Yeah. So, but I noticed that my middle grandchild, she is the most interested. She is actually helping me. Like, she's 4.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, Grandma, I want to help. And I was like, okay. And so she helps with the hay. Like, she helps put the hay, you know, so I can take it out to the horses. She helps collect eggs. She wants to collect the eggs every single time. And she just, so far, she hasn't like lost that, like, this is so exciting thing, you know. And she helps me in the garden. And she wants to do physical work.
We do a thing where the kids have management roles. And so they're kind of in charge of one part of our farm. And then we do family meetings, and they get to help make the bigger decisions. It isn't just a chore where they're up there feeding. Right. They're actually in charge of those animals. And my daughter was always our chicken manager, but now she's starting to help more in the house and do those types of things. So she's training her 5-year-old brother to be the chicken manager. Nice. And he is taking it so serious. It's like awesome. So he has chicks in the brooder right now. He has 4-week-old meat birds out in the chicken tractor. And then he's got our hens and our new chicks this year for replacement hens, and he is all over it.
That's so great. And you did that very well. I don't think I wish I could go back and like do some more of that with the older kids, like, but it was just kind of a new life for me, really, you know, too. And I didn't want to force that on it, but I could have approached it differently. Like, okay, you're managing this. By the time my youngest came around, it was like, need some help. I need to train her. I need her to make sure she loves this. And plus, since she was so far from the other kids, she didn't have any siblings to play with. So the animals were like, you know, her playmates, the goats for sure. And maybe that's why I have such a fondness for the goats, because they kept her entertained for so long.
I can see that. That was definitely, we had our 5-year-old, and then my husband got diagnosed when he was 6 months old, and we're like, okay, I guess we're not having any more because we don't know where life is taking us from here. And as his health mellowed out, we didn't have like a final answer of if we had fixed him or not. I don't know if fix is the right word, but we're like, we can't have this poor child being an only child of his age group, you know? So we decided to go ahead and have one more, and they are so happy together. Like, they're
that's great.
Best buds. And it's nice, you know, they're 3 and 5 and crazy boys.
Yeah.
Although I think the youngest is going to give the 5-year-old a heart attack because he's very sensitive and concerned about everybody. And the 3-year-old like, hold my beer.
Well, they balance each other out, I'm sure.
True. The 5-year-old's the one who's the chicken manager, and he was like in tears the other day because he went to the back fridge to get a gallon of milk, and his little brother had put a chick in the fridge.
Oh.
The chick survived, but
Okay, good.
but
Yeah.
I mean, he was just like, one of my chicks was in the fridge and he's
Mhm.
cold. Which I
Poor
mean was
thing.
horrible. I don't want to just be offing chicks by putting them in the
Yeah.
fridge, but
Yeah,
I
sorry, go ahead.
no, we just couldn't stop laughing because we're like, what a ridiculous thing to find. And like Wade
Yeah.
was so devastated.
My youngest has some, I'm not going to out her because she's now an adult and I don't want to, but she's done some very interesting things because she was, curious and, just, I won't tell the stories, but it sounds very similar to what my daughter did.
Well, I've been talking about all the crazy things that Branch, our youngest, has done since day one on the podcast. So everybody's like, what did Branch do this week?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean,
the chick
by the
one's
time,
the funniest, yeah.
yeah, by the time he's, older, it won't even like these will be way back cataloged.
This is how I'll remember. I'll go back and listen to these and be like, oh, I remember when
Yeah.
you did that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, my husband's all the poor chick has cold feet. Oh man, these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had somebody who came to you and said, hey, I want to get started homesteading, what do I do? What would be the first like kind of handful of steps you'd give them?
Yeah. Well, we talked about community. That's
Mm-hmm.
like the first thing. That's actually the first thing on the checklist that I share. Like get connected, at the very least, get connected with an online community, but
Yeah.
if you local community is super important. We had such a great homesteading community in California. I really miss it because I made such great connections, and
Mm-hmm.
things that you don't think about, um, the community can provide for you. Like I think a lot of people think when they start their homesteading journey, they want all the things because they see everybody have all the things, like the ducks and the goats and the chickens and
Mm-hmm.
the things. But for one, it can become very overwhelming really quickly. And it's never just one more thing. Anytime you have a responsibility for one more animal or one more, even a
Mm-hmm.
garden box, like it's more time you're taking away from something else. And it may be
Mm-hmm.
worth it, but you have to understand that it's not just one more thing. So your community, like let's say you wanted eggs, duck eggs, you have chicken eggs, you want duck eggs, you think that's really great. Well, your community can provide that for you. You don't have to be the one that does it.
Yep.
Your community can grow the corn. You can find somebody who's growing corn,
I often
buy or
say all
trade.
the time that like true self-sufficiency is kind of a utopian concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I even go so far as saying that we need community dependency, not
Mm-hmm.
fully, but there needs to be that thought that we're just not meant to live by ourselves. We're not meant to do
Mm-hmm.
things by ourselves. It's not healthy for our minds. It's not healthy for our community itself. Like
Mm-hmm.
for the wherever you live, if everybody's doing everything off on their own, then you don't have a strong community. So it's when you get together that makes you strong. So yeah, that's like the first thing, like find somewhere local. And if you can't find it, start it. That's what we did in
Yep.
California. A friend of mine that was my neighbor, and she kind of got me started in a lot of things like the dairy goats, and she knew how to garden and everything. We kind of started, this homesteading community together, and we, it expanded, and everybody, we would do certain things, and that it expanded to a garden group. It expanded to a beekeeping group. It like did its thing, but
I like
like
that.
we didn't see it. We didn't have it. So we created it, and we weren't like really super intentional, like, oh, well, we're going to create this big thing. We were just like, we need this. This is what we're going to
Uh-huh.
do. We're going to have a meeting or a get together. We'd have barter days. And anytime there was a goat being born, or, goat birthing, kidding season, there would be
Mhm.
different families would help each other and go, because it's always harder when you are the responsible person for the animal being, going through the birthing process. Have you experienced that? Like
Yes.
when it's your animal, it's
I
so different.
actually we had a stuck kid
Mm.
um that we had to help that my husband has giant like paw hands.
Mm.
They're like hams. He wears like a size 15 ring.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to help get this goat out, and I was 7.5 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like
Mm-hmm.
squatting, sitting on a metal chair out in the barn trying to help get this kid out while my
Mm-hmm.
husband's like holding the goat's head, so that she
Mm-hmm.
can't be moving around a lot because I can't move around a lot. It was
Right.
just,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
we've been
so
there.
different. And then when you're responsible, it just something changes about something changes about you. So it's
Mhm.
nice to have somebody there who's not the responsible person, and just be able to say, okay, just let's talk this through. It's not,
Yeah.
and I was able to do that for other people, and they were able to do it for me. And it was just those are some of the things you don't really think about that your community can help you with. So,
Mhm.
they can help you with helping your dreams come true of owning blank, or they can help you when you need support in that way. And I just so that would be the first thing, is community.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have I actually was going to pull it up and I forgot to because I always forget my steps. I
Oh,
mean, I
funny.
know them, but I think well, educate yourself is one of them. Like,
Mhm.
don't wait until you have the farm to start educating yourself. Like, book knowledge is still knowledge, and this.
Mhm.
You know this as an educator and a curriculum creator. This, like, book knowledge is still knowledge, and it can prepare
Mhm.
your mind for the actual the actual hands-on part of it. It can prepare
Mhm.
your mind for it. So use that time. If you're in a place where you don't, you haven't started yet, use this time to educate yourself, and then go
Mhm.
out into the community and learn hands-on or whatever it is.
That's kind of that's the biggest part of my platform, is kind of teaching all the things they didn't know they needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that's, as you start farming for the first time, you're like, okay, I watched a YouTube, this is how they planted their garden.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this. I can handle it. I went to Home Depot. They, gave me a little pamphlet on how to do it. Like, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's, then nothing's growing in their garden. And it's like, well, did you test your soil? What's that?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's
Yeah.
that kind of. So, like, yeah, I try to teach on all the things they didn't know they needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
That even
Yeah.
some of the greatest, homestead educators out there, they're learning kind of as they go too. So if I can
Mm-hmm.
kind of put that forefront where you can learn what you need to learn and then find the information from there,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of, so yeah, I definitely think the education is a big piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can learn from, there's so much information now
Mhm.
online, and that's kind of the problem, is that there's so much information online, and people don't know how to sift through. And I think people are really starting to find people like you, where they like trust someone
Mhm.
and say, okay, I can obviously see that they're doing it the right way, and I'm going to follow this person. And I think that, I think we're
I actually,
shifting. I
I
think
had a
things are
whole,
shifting.
yeah, I had a whole podcast episode on, is it relatable or reliable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of call it like a learning revolution happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Reliable information. People are definitely looking for that. And there's nothing wrong with chronic, recording your journey. Like,
Oh yeah,
a
it's
lot of these social media
it's great
accounts.
entertainment, and it
Yeah.
can be very informative. It like piques those interests.
Yeah. But we just have to be careful, as like even now I will see something, I'm like, is that something you can actually do? Is this just person just do it and created a informative video on it where it sounds like it's fact, but it doesn't really work. Like, I have to, like,
Yeah, I
do
understand that.
that.
And even some of the best educators.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could throw names out there, but I mean, we know who some of like the gurus are.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're teaching on the East Coast and I
Right.
live on the West Coast, am I going to kill my whole garden because I followed their
Mm-hmm.
instructions? where their
Yeah.
instructions would be great for their farm. Or if I contacted them directly and said, what do I do for my farm? They'd probably be able to give that information. But
Right.
just watching the YouTube video that they did or the blog that they wrote specifically on how to start things in their growing zone or their climate could be totally different for what I do.
Yeah. Which is another reason when we get back to like community, your local community actually knows how to grow food in your area. And your local community, even microclimates. When we were in California, there's so many in the mountains, especially like you across the town, somebody would have its completely different microclimate than we had at our property. So we couldn't even go, what is happening over there at your house? Like, how do you grow this? We couldn't even do that. We had to ask the people around us.
I live in a banana belt where I'm at. So in North Idaho, I'm technically a 6B, but I think we're more a 7, like growing zone, which is unheard of for North Idaho. And actually across the border in Canada, they're definitely a 7.
Okay.
But you just drive like the 27 miles to town and they're in a banana belt and they're like a 5B.
Wow.
Growing zone.
So I mean,
it's a big difference. Like I'm going to be able to put everything in, all my plants in the ground. Like what's today? The 16th. I could have done it yesterday. But in town, there's no way they still have frosty mornings. So
that's so interesting. I mean, I knew it was happening across other country. I mean, other states, but it's just, even here in Georgia, we're in North Georgia. North Georgia is very different than South Georgia. We're closer to the mountains. We're closer, everything's hilly. South Georgia is really flat. More flat.
I actually, I knew the Appalachians were big, but oh my gosh, I went to the Great Smokies 2 weeks ago and I was just blown away at the size of those mountains.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's close to where you're at, not the same.
Yeah. We're not really that close. I mean, we're about an hour and a half to the Tennessee border and also the North Carolina border. So we're pretty much like almost an hour and a half to 2 hours from all of the borders or bordering states. Except for Florida, that takes about 6 hours.
Oh goodness, yeah. When I was there, I flew into Atlanta and had to drive down to Dothan, Alabama. And then I wanted to see the coast, so we drove on down to Florida and we were like, this is a long way, but it was worth it.
Maybe to the border it's not quite that long, but to actual like the beach it takes about 6 hours. But yeah,
where we were, it was, I guess, do they call it the Panhandle of Florida? I don't know.
I think there's a Panhandle.
So we weren't there. So I mean, as soon as we got down to southern Alabama, I mean, it was maybe 10 more minutes and we were at the coast.
Okay.
Yeah. That was fun though. My son had never seen the Gulf Coast, so
it was interesting for me because California's beaches, we're on the
cold, nasty.
The cold, but the sun sets. And then we went to Tybee Island. Yeah, the sun sets there. But then we went to Tybee Island, which is in Georgia. Right? I think so. I'm so unfamiliar with where I am. But the sun wasn't setting in, like it was setting like to the side. It was almost like it was disorienting.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's what I don't really like the coast, but if I'm going to be on the coast, I love it at sunset.
Yeah.
And
it's not
there's actually, there's a Willie Nelson song, The Sun Sank West of the Mendocino County Line.
Oh.
And that's where I grew up, was in Mendocino County.
Okay.
But I'm much more of a mountain person.
Yeah.
Now I'm drawn to the water in the mountains. I'm going to find every lake and river and creek that there is.
Yeah.
I will actually get on like GPS maps and find lakes, and we'll drive as close as we can and then hike the rest of the way to them, just to maybe be there for a half an hour so I can see it. But
there's some really nice lakes here in Georgia. That's definitely lake country here.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'll have to put that on my bucket list.
Yeah. Yeah, we're only about 15 minutes from a pretty big lake that goes a lot of North Georgia. It goes through a lot of North Georgia.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I want to see all the lakes. So
yeah.
So as we're getting closer to the end of our time, my favorite question for all my guests is, what does keep growing mean to you?
I actually listened to a couple of your episodes recently and I was like, how am I going to answer that? But something did
Oh,
come to
you
mind.
cheated. No.
I did cheat. Um, but you ever have a volunteer tomato?
Yes.
You know how they like find a spot and they will like grow however, like they'll grow however they need to produce to become a big full-size plant. Like
Uh-huh.
they don't wait for anybody to move them to a nice bed. They don't wait to do like to be in the perfect spot. They just pivot and they keep pressing on. They keep growing. And so that's kind of what I was thinking, like keep growing. It just means like to pivot or press on. Don't give up, you know. I mean, there are times, I will say this, there are times you might have to give up on a certain dream, but doesn't mean you have to give up on your whole dream. So just keep pivoting and pressing on until, you know, you have created what the life that you want. That's the best I could come up with.
No, I love it. I actually, I was in the garden with my daughter a couple days ago and we were just putting our some starts in. And I was like, this is our last chance to get any big weeds out of this bed. So let's go ahead and do that. And there's these weeds that we had hoed the bed and these little sprouts were growing back up. And I mean, we'd literally pull them and go out the night, like an hour later, and they were back. I was like, I am losing my mind with these weeds. And so I went into all the spots and I dug down and got a hold of the top of the taproot. And I mean, it was coming out 18 inches long. And my daughter's like, how in the heck do these grow practically overnight? And these are new raised beds that we just put in last year. So, I mean, this isn't like they've been here forever and had time. She's like, how is there an 18-inch root? But when we plant our tomato plants, I mean, you push them too hard and they fall out of the ground. And I was like, that's because tomatoes have been cultivated for years to kind of be babied. Like they don't have to have those deep tap roots because they're going to be taken care of in a different way versus these weeds, we're getting rid of them. Animals are eating them. They had to adapt and have these giant long tap roots. And so that kind of,
yeah. But the volunteer tomatoes, man, they're hardy.
They are, yeah.
They
Way
are
hardier
hardy
than anything else.
Yeah, I can always move them and then they're fine. But like, so that's like, I guess the point is like, you know, the hardship doesn't make it a worse, you know, you can still grow into this beautiful plant through hardship.
I love it. So do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, so my website is healthyhomesteading.com, and that's pretty much you can find everything there. But my podcast is Homesteading for Beginners, and I just help people have the right mindset, basically. And, you know, I interview people as well. I'm doing 2 episodes a week now. So it's hard to maintain that, but I don't know how you do
a
it.
week.
Yeah. You've been doing it that way for a while too. Huh? Yeah. I just started this, so it's like a different transition, but yeah, my podcast and my website are probably the best places.
Okay, great. I'll make sure I link all that. And thank you so much for coming on today. And everybody make sure you pop over and check out what Mona's offering.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning in on how to win tickets to the Indiana Homesteading Conference for 2023. The Indiana Homesteading Conference will be held October 21st and 22nd, 2023 at the Marion County Fairgrounds outside of Indianapolis and is dedicated to partnering to teach sustainable living skills and encourage community. Kody Hanner with the Homestead Education has partnered with the Indiana Homestead Conference to give away 2 weekend passes. Passes include access to all the conference breakout sessions both days. This is 25 sessions per day with 5 time slots and 5 options to choose from each slot. You do not want to miss this amazing lineup of speakers. Just so you know, the hog roast, junior homesteaders, and the intensive workshops are not included, but can be purchased at an additional charge. But I bet you just want to hear how to win these tickets. And we are so excited to be giving them out. First thing you need to do is follow the Homestead Education on Facebook. The second one is follow the Indiana Homesteading Conference on Facebook. Then use the link in the show notes to sign up for the Homestead Education newsletter through that link. And on May 31st at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will be drawing the winners live. Once we draw a winner, we're going to check to make sure that you're following both the Homestead Education and the Indiana Homestead Conference in order to qualify. If you don't, we will be pulling a new winner. So make sure you pop over to thehomesteadeducation.com/Indiana Homesteading to sign up to win those tickets. Thank you for tuning in on how to win tickets to the Indiana Homesteading Conference for 2023. The Indiana Homesteading Conference will be held October 21st and 22nd, 2023 at the Marion County Fairgrounds outside of Indianapolis and is dedicated to partnering to teach sustainable living skills and encourage community. Kody Hanner with the Homestead Education has partnered with the Indiana Homestead Conference to give away 2 weekend passes. Passes include access to all the conference breakout sessions both days. This is 25 sessions per day with 5 time slots and 5 options from each to choose from each slot. You do not want to miss this amazing lineup of speakers. Just so you know, the hog roast, junior homesteaders, and the intensive workshops are not included, but can be purchased at an additional charge. But I bet you just want to hear how to win these tickets. And we are so excited to be giving them out. First thing you need to do is follow the Homestead Education on Facebook. The second one is follow the Indiana Homesteading Conference on Facebook. Then use the link in the show notes to sign up for the Homestead Education newsletter through that link. And on May 31st at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will be drawing the winners live. Once we draw a winner, we're going to check to make sure that you're following both the Homestead Education and the Indiana Homestead Conference in order to qualify. If you don't, we will be pulling a new winner. So make sure you pop over to thehomesteadeducation.com/Indiana Homesteading to sign up to win those tickets. Thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education, and I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at the Homestead Education and Instagram at Homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing!